Right, yeah.
We're on.
Now my nose is running. Okay, folks, we are going to get started. Once again, welcome to this year's release of the Speak Up 2015 national results. We're going to be talking about our new report that we're releasing today called From Print to Pixel, the role of videos, games, animations, and simulations within K-12 education. It's so nice to have all of you here in the room with us today, as well as our virtual audience that is with us through the web simulcast. So hello to all of you out there as well. So we're going to start off today with a little bit of an introduction to both Project Tomorrow and the report itself. And then I have the distinct pleasure of having some of our friends from Blackboard who are going to share some comments with us as well. The meat of the program is going to be the release of the national findings. We'll be sharing some of those national findings. And I have with me an expert panel of students as well as teachers that I'm going to be asking some questions of them about the national findings to get their perspective, their firsthand, front row perspective. And then we also have some time for your questions of the panel as well. So I'm really looking forward to all of that. So let me tell you a little bit about the schools that are represented here on our panel today. We have folks here from Baltimore City Public Schools. Omar is from Baltimore City. We have some folks that are here from Calvert County as well. We have Mrs. McGonigal from Calvert County. We have Fairfax County is represented as well. And Frederick County, we have some students here and a teacher. And then also Prince William. Dean right now is holding up the fort on Prince William at this point. We also want to thank Representative Dan Lipinski from Illinois, who made it possible for us to use this lovely room here today. So thank you very much to him. So if you are of the Twitter mind and you are into that, we are going to be doing some tweeting out today from this event. We're using the hashtag #SpeakUpBriefing if you'd like to use that. I also included my handle as well as our Speak Up handle as well. There'll be a couple opportunities when, if you are into that type of thing, you can even tweet out some answers. So hopefully that'll be kind of fun. So just a little bit about the organization that I represent, Project Tomorrow. We are a global education nonprofit group. We're very focused in on the learning experiences that students are having both in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom, particularly around the use of digital tools. We do research projects, we have opportunities for students to engage in different types of learning opportunities, and of course we are also very involved with making sure that we share our findings with people to impact advocacy and different policy initiatives. The project that we are talking about here, the report is based on, is the Speak Up Research Project. It is an annual research project that we've been conducting since 2003 to report on the authentic feedback of students, teachers, parents, administrators, and even community members around digital learning. We make online surveys available to any K-12 school and district that wants to use them to collect feedback from their own stakeholders. We share the national findings in events such as this, but most importantly, we give back to the participating schools and districts their own locally collected data so that they can use that data to impact change within their schools and districts. Since we started this project in 2003, we've had about 4.5 million surveys that have been submitted to us through Speak Up. So of course we can't do that without our fabulous partners that help us, and I know several of them are here with us today. I know that our friends from NSTA are here. Al, it's good to have you here. I think some of our friends from COSN are here. Irene is here representing COSN as well. I think possibly we have some friends that are here from the Alliance for Excellent Education, as well as the American Association of School Administrators as well. It's good to have all of you here. In addition to that, Speak Up is possible through a fabulous group of sponsors that we have. We have a nice group of folks that are here from Blackboard, so wonderful to have you all here. We also receive support from BrainPop, CDW, Qualcomm Wireless Reach, Scholastic, and Dreambox Learning. So thank you to all of our sponsors and partners. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite my two good friends from Blackboard. Lee Blakemore is the Senior Vice President of K-12, and Stephanie Weeks is the Vice President of K-12 Strategy, to give us a few opening remarks on today's event. Lee and Stephanie?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us here. It's great to be in a room with some kids. So you guys are doing great. You're going to do well today. So thanks for having us. We've been working with Project Tomorrow since about 2006, and it's been a fabulous experience for us. And at Blackboard, we're focused on teaching and learning and educational outcomes and student success. A lot of that discussion and thought process is based on the findings and the discussions we have with people like yourselves and with this project. And as we go through this project over the years and have these discussions and dialogue, it really shapes the way we think about how we can improve student success. And so we thank you for all that participation, and we thank you for the opportunity to participate. We're going to talk about today is really trying to change the dialogue around education. How can we improve the outcome? How can we improve the results in the classroom? And we're going to see there's a lot of challenges, and there's a lot high expectations. People want more out of us, and so we're going to continue to work hard and strive. And with your help and support, I think we'll get there. So thank you for the opportunity.
One of the things that is so important to us in this partnership with Project Tomorrow is making sure that teachers and students, administrators, community members, family members really have a voice and are able to have this dialogue about how to make change in education where it's needed, and how to empower teachers to make change in the classroom, how to empower students to carry forward and have the agency that they can have in creating their own experience as well and being responsible for their education. And that's something that we're incredibly passionate about at Blackboard. Two very special examples that we have in our Blackboard community is one is a public school district in Lawrence, Kansas, where they are systematically making change in how the educational experience happens in the classroom, bringing in more and more digital activities, but putting that side by side with the activities that students are used to and bringing their families into that conversation. Making that kind of change means not just change inside the classroom with teachers and students, but also the support from the administrators to provide the preparedness necessary to provide an open place for conversation and how to create change, and bringing the families into the conversation as well so that family members understand the change that's happening, can talk about it with their kids at home, and the community can be supportive and providing also that environment for change. So we're really excited about learning more about the results that Julie's going to share today. And again, it really comes back to us all being involved in creating an environment for change, where change is welcome, where change can be discussed, where change can be innovative and exciting for everyone that's involved. And we will both continue to talk about this all year. We've got conferences through the summer. ISTE and InSpread, our own Blackboard World, will continue to talk about this alongside Julie, and we're available if you want to talk with us as well. So thank you all for being here, and thank you so much, Julie, for inviting us to be a part of it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so very much, Stephanie and Lee. It's wonderful having the entire Blackboard team here, and to have your support over so many years. It's really been fabulous. Thank you so very much. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to be talking about this year's national results. And so what I'm going to do first is share with you a little bit more about Speak Up 2015, the data that we collected last fall. I'm going to share with you some highlights of the report, and then most importantly, we're going to have our ongoing discussion with our partners here, our students and our teachers. So a key finding from our research is that, very interestingly, students, educators, and parents agree we need a different type of learning experience to help prepare the students for the future. So Stephanie and Lee's comments about change are very relevant to the findings that we have received from the report. But in terms of what does that change look like and what does that future look like, that is a little bit more up to determination. What we decided to do with this year's report was to focus in on specifically on an area of change that we had seen developing over the last couple of years through the data, and that was the use of videos, games, animations, and simulations in the classroom. So what I'm going to do as part of the data release today is share with you a little bit of information about the growth of digital content in the K-12 classroom. We're going to talk about how those tools are being used in the classroom, and we have some teachers to share with us their perspective. And then we also are going to talk to the students a little bit about how they're using these tools, videos, games, animations, and simulations outside of school to actually self-direct their learning as well. Now, why did we choose this particular theme? Well, it's sort of interesting if you start looking at some of the external data that's out there. I think this particular fact is so interesting. What I read was that the brain processes visual information 60 times faster than text. So if we start to think about that, some of the explosion around the use of videos, animation, simulation, even games makes sense. We're also all familiar with the explosion in terms of people using YouTube videos for all kinds of things. It goes deeper than cat videos, just so that you know. And then also the digital games market. I thought this was also an interesting statistic. So the digital game market today is 10 times larger than the traditional board game market, which I thought was also really interesting. The other reason that we chose this particular theme, and we've been tracking this over time, is the growth in teacher usage of digital content just over the last 3 years. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on this data in a couple of minutes, but just to give you sort of a snapshot of this, look at this growth in terms of videos. 68% of teachers told us that they're using some type of videos that they're finding online in their classroom this year, compared to only 47% in 2012. And the games, the use of games has also greatly expanded in the classroom as well. And then, of course, the other thing that's top of mind to us is what are we hearing from the students? So here's a particular quote. This happens to be from a 10th grade girl in Guam who talked about students would learn faster and more efficiently using things such as social media, online videos, step-by-step formats that they find on Google. So this combination of what's happening in our popular culture, what we saw happening with teachers, and what we heard from the students themselves made us think maybe this is something interesting that we should dive a little bit deeper into. So let's get right into it, folks. Let's think back to our own high school days. Maybe not like this picture. I hope not like this picture. But we're going to think a little bit about our high school days. So I've got a question for you. So what was your hardest subject when you were in high school? Was it algebra, chemistry, economics, world language, lunch maybe? Let's take a vote. We'll just vote by hand here. Who says their hardest subject was algebra? And this is like true confessions. Chemistry? Sorry, Mrs. McGonigal. Economics? A few. Whatever world languages you were taking, oh, we've got a few of those. Anybody voting for lunch? You know, the social scene in high school, maybe that was a little bit more challenging than others. Okay, well, we're going to go with, I think, the crowd favorite, or at least where I needed help, which was chemistry class. And so, in fact, we're going to take a walk into Mrs. McGonigal, who teaches high school chemistry. Go ahead, Beth, wave to the crowd. We're going to take a walk into her class. In fact, Mrs. McGonigal has set up a website specifically for her class, which is to aid her students and also to provide a platform for her instruction. So we're going to go into her class. Oh, there she is right here. So here we are in her website, which she set up through Weebly. And she has all sorts of information there. And I'm going to ask her some questions about this in a moment. Oh, I didn't want just for fun. We could do just for fun later, folks, okay? We're going to look at chemical reactions. Now, I don't know about you, but chemistry was particularly challenging for me. I grew up, I'm looking at my friend Al Byers here from NSTA, and I'm doing True Confessions with him. I grew up in New York State, and I can remember Mrs. McGonigal getting prepped for the regents, the chemistry regents in New York State, and cramming an entire year of chemistry right before that test. But we have other options to help students today. And so what we're actually going to do is that we're going to take a short look at a video that Mrs. McGonigal uses in her classroom. So here we are right in a chemistry classroom about chemical reactions. So we'll take a couple moments to experience this video.
Meet our chemist, Harriet. She has a chemical reaction that needs to occur more quickly. Our chemist has some processes at her disposal that can help her speed up her reaction, and she knows of 5 ways. And to remember them, she thinks back to her days as a high school student, and the day she got a date for the dance. Harriet was in high school studying between classes. She had lost track of time and was going to be late to class. Unbeknownst to her, Harold, who was just around the corner, was running late too. They both sprinted to class, and as it happened, sprinted directly into one another. Now, this was no small collision. They ran squarely into one another in such a way that he knocked the books right out of her hand. "I'm sorry," he said. "Let me help you with your books." He kindly helped her recollect her belongings and politely offered to walk her to class. And you'll never guess who went together to the dance later that year. Yep, those two. So as we can see from this example, the key to getting a date for the dance is to collide with someone and knock the books out of their hands. Now, you're probably already aware that not all collisions lead to dates for the dance, thankfully. The collisions must have 2 important characteristics. 1, correct orientation that allows books to be knocked from one's hands, and 2, enough energy to knock the books out. Shortly after this incident, Harriet decided to tell me, her chemistry teacher, all about it. I noticed some interesting parallels between her story and chemical reaction rates, which happened to be what she was studying in the hallway the day of the collision. Together, we decided to set out on 2 missions. Harriet wanted to help all chemistry students and chemists remember how to speed up the rate of chemical reactions, and I, being the nice guy that I am, decided to make it my mission to help create educational environments in which more book-dropping collisions can take place to increase future chemists' chances of getting a date for the dance. In order to facilitate this improved dance date-getting process, I propose 5 changes to all schools that parallel Harriet's 5 ways to increase chemical reaction rates. First, I propose that we shrink the size of the hallways. This will make it more difficult to safely navigate the hallways and will cause more collisions than in larger hallways. And by increasing the number of collisions, we increase the likelihood that some of those collisions will have the correct alignment and enough energy to create a date to the dance. Now, chemically speaking, this is equivalent to lowering the volume of a reaction vessel or a reaction mixture. In doing so, the individual particles are closer together and more collisions will occur. More collisions means a greater likelihood that collisions with the appropriate energy and configuration will happen. Second, I propose increasing the overall population of the school. More students equals more collisions. By increasing the number of particles available for collision, we create an environment where more collisions can take place. Third, we must reduce the time allowed between classes. Heck, let's just cut it in half. In doing so, students will need to move more quickly to get from one class to the next. This increase in velocity will help make sure collisions have the appropriate amount of energy necessary to ensure book dropping. This is analogous to increasing the temperature of the reaction mixture. Higher temperature means particles are moving faster. Faster moving particles means more energy and greater likelihood of reaction causing collision. Fourth, students must stop traveling in packs. By traveling in packs, those students on the outside of the pack insulate those in the middle from undergoing any collisions. By splitting up, each student has more area exposed that is available for a collision from a passing student. When particles travel in packs, the surface area is very small
and very topic specific. So TED Ed is one of the ones that is really good for that. That one I might use at the very beginning to introduce the collision theory. And then we break it down as to what are the 5 different ways in which I can speed up a reaction. The kids can remember it very quickly because they relate it back to this silly little video that they see. So it saves a lot of time as far as, writing things down, and they talk about it later. And when a child is absent, they are able to, I can just say on my blog, go watch this video, and they can watch it. Or if they didn't understand something, they missed something, they go back and watch it as well.
Thank you very much. So a couple things like that. So how would a teacher use a video like this in class? What would be the benefits of using that sort of video? Mrs. McGonigal gave us a few suggestions as that. We'll talk more about that. But also, how are students more engaged because of learning where videos are involved, where games are involved, animations such as this or simulations? Do they actually learn more through that type of learning experience? And does that experience then nurture or stimulate greater interest in chemistry or whatever subject we're talking about? So we're going to be talking about all of that as part of our conversation here today. So some questions to keep in mind. So, getting into the report itself, really 3 chapters we're going to be looking at, or 3 sections today. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of digital content in schools, the growth of digital content in schools. Then we'll talk about how teachers and students are using these type of tools in the classroom. And then again, as I said, how students are doing them outside of school, using those tools outside of school. So the Speak Up data that I'm sharing with you today is based on our Speak Up survey process, where the surveys were open from the beginning of October to about the middle of December. So once again, any K-12 school or district that wants to use our surveys can use them to collect feedback from their stakeholders. So we had a little bit over 505,000 surveys that were submitted from schools and districts all across the country. And you can see the breakdown here in terms of the number of students, teachers and librarians, parents, school and district administrators, as well as community members. It represented about 7,800 schools and almost 2,700 districts from all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia, Guam, and actually schools all over the world that came to us through the Department of Defense school network as well. Now, the other thing that's interesting here is that it includes urban, rural, and suburban schools as well. Now, we had a couple states that had extraordinary participation this past year. Indiana was actually our #1 state in terms of participation nationwide, followed then by Texas, California, and actually Maryland had very strong participation this year as well. So a shout out to all of our top performing states. So we'll take a look at some of our student data, our teacher data, a little bit of parent data, and some administrative data as well. So the first thing we're going to look at is what is the state of the state in terms of digital content use in our schools? Well, very interestingly, for the first time this year, we can report that 82% of districts say that they're using some type of digital content or online resources regularly within classroom instruction. We were very impressed with that percentage. Specifically to digital games, which we also thought was very interesting, 40% of district administrators said they are part of their instructional practice at this point. Now, we asked principals, so what are the benefits of using digital content within instruction at your school? The #1 benefit, 80% of principals said it increases student engagement in student and learning. I think the other benefits were also really strong, though. The idea of extending learning beyond the school day. We know as we're preparing today's students for an uncertain future, a future where we're not definitely sure what types of jobs or careers are going to be available for them. There's a lot of preparation, particularly around skill development, that we want to accomplish as part of the school day. And so having the opportunity to extend that learning process is something that's also important, as is the opportunity for learning to be personalized to meet the individual needs of students. I think it's also really interesting when the administrators talk to us about the fact that the use of digital content within instruction helps to improve teacher skill with technology. And that really gets to what the principals tell us is their biggest challenge today. And what they tell us is what is most challenging for them is how to motivate teachers to change the way they've been teaching over so many years to be able to leverage these new tools, the videos, the games, the animations, the simulations. What is needed in terms of professional development? What is needed on the ground support? What is needed to make sure that the teachers have the tools that they need to be successful as they are changing that instructional practice? So, time for us to hear from our experts. So what we're going to do to get started is that we're first going to have everybody introduce themselves. And so students, we're going to be the starters of this so that the teachers know how to do it, okay? So you're going to start, Dean. So Dean, I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to tell me what grade you're in and what is the name of your school. And you have to talk into the microphone. Okay, you and Alessandro are going to share that.
I'm Dean, and I'm in 5th grade, and I represent Mary Williams.
Okay.
My name is Sandro. I'm from Bristol Ron. I'm in 5th grade.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Adeline Marion, and I go to Frederick County Middle School. I'm in 7th grade.
Hi, I'm Ben Smith. I go to Frederick County Middle School and I'm 7th grade.
Hey, my name is Omar, and I go to Friendship of Engineering Technology, and I'm in the 11th.
Good. So I think our students did a pretty good job. Teachers.
My name is Beth Panicucci, and I teach at Key Middle School, which is part of Fairfax County Public Schools, and I teach 7th grade U.S. history.
Hi, I'm Amy Dotson. I teach at Frederick County Middle School in Winchester, Virginia, which is Frederick County. I teach 7th grade history.
Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Keating. I teach at Chantilly High School, which is part of Fairfax County. I teach 10th grade world history and geography, too.
Hi, I'm Beth McGonigal. I teach in chemistry, as you all know, in Calvert County, Maryland, and I love it, and chemistry is the best.
Though we have a lot of history teachers here, Beth.
That's what I was noticing.
Okay, so since I started with the students for introductions, I'm going to start with the teachers in terms of our questioning opportunity. So tell me, not necessarily based on your own experiences, but thinking about your school or thinking about your district, have you seen a change over the last couple of years in terms of the use of digital content by teachers? What can you share with us about that?
Well, I seem to be the big mouth, so I'll keep going. There's been a huge change at my school. We've been open now for 12 years, and in that time, we've gone from just a few computer labs to more plentiful computer labs. We've gone to additional laboratory or laptop carts that we can take into the classroom. And now we've gone with Wi-Fi in the school, which is huge. So a lot of the kids can use their smartphones to access things online. That has been a big change because as a teacher, originally when you have limited access, you don't think to keep including it because can I get the computer lab? Can I get the computer lab? Or somebody, am I going to get it bumped? Is the internet going to work today? But at least this year, knock on wood, it's been an awesome year as far as the availability of computers, the internet not going down, and the speed of the Wi-Fi has been pretty good. So we've been fortunate.
Mary Catherine?
We're really excited. We just got the pilot for the one-to-one next year. So I know when I started 23 years ago, I didn't even have a phone in my classroom. And I mean, I was really excited when I first got my phone and was recording my homework. But yes, parents loved me. I was on the head of the technology curve. But even this year, I found that I'm having more and more access, but I cannot wait till next year when the students themselves will have that technology because I'm losing my computers in 2 weeks that I've been using all year because they take them for the testing. Next year, the students will have that device that I can keep doing what I'm doing and not change for state testing.
Good.
I've been at Frederick County Middle School for 17 years, and I've seen a huge progression from the computer labs and the same thing, trying to fight over the computer labs. But this year we are a one-to-one school, and it has been extraordinary. And we have, as a building, been sharing all the new things that we have discovered, and it has really grown and progressed. We will have a brand-new building next year, so we are very excited to see what that brings for us, too.
Fabulous.
In the last few years, we've implemented a Bring Your Own Device program, which allows students to bring a device of their own into the classroom to use for instruction. That helps them learn to use their device for educational purposes as well. And what helps is at our school, the students can check out laptops or netbooks like library books from the library and take them home to do their work online.
Good. So we got a nice sort of overview of the type of environment that you're working with. And I've got some follow-on questions, but I want to bring something here over to the students. And remember, students, the way we're going to do this, if you have an answer, you're going to let me know. You're going to wave or something at me. Talk to me a little bit, students, about how you are using technology in your classes. So think about a particular class or subject where you have used technology or some type of digital content to help you with your learning. Can you give us an example of how you're doing that? Go ahead, Omar, you can start us off.
So as of right now, I'm in this design class, and I really enjoy it. We use the application called Adobe Illustrator, and we're using Photoshop as well, and it's really fun to use. At the same time, we're still learning what we got to learn for coding as well.
Okay, good example. Okay. Someone else? Addie, go ahead.
In my history class, we play on Google Classroom when she can post links, and we can do lots of fun stuff on there.
Okay, good. Go ahead, Ben.
In algebra class, we've been using quizzes, a game that lets us basically practice for tests and stuff that we have coming up.
Okay, so some game type stuff. Sandra?
At Bristol, during math for 5th grade, we went in Minecraft to this fraction house where we had to list all the fractions in the house.
And that was fun?
Yes.
Okay. You want to do that again?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
In math class, I use Kahoot a lot, so then I could do like discussions or quizzes, and we use it for like algebra or distributive property.
Okay, wow. Algebra in 5th grade. I'm impressed. Okay, back over to our teachers here. You saw that statistic that I had where principals are concerned about how do they get teachers to change their instructional practice, and they actually use the word motivate. And we know professional development's important, we know support's important. What do you think from your experiences, and some of you have had different types of experiences, what do you think is needed to be able to help teachers move along in terms of being effective with the use of technology? Go ahead, Mary Catherine.
This is one I'm fighting at my school because I'm the one who's like, technology, technology, technology. And I've got a whole group of what they call paleo teachers who are like,
I haven't heard that term.
Jay Matthews in the Washington Post did a
okay.
story on
All right. Good.
about no screens. And one of the things I was very, very lucky this year, I literally got trained on how to do blended learning, and the focus wasn't on the technology. They actually brought us, there were only about 6 or 7 of us. Now, granted, we were there who wanted to be there, but instead of focusing on the technology and what the technology could do, we started with the teaching. What does teaching look like? And the idea that, and this is what I'm facing with the one-to-one, because our teachers are like, oh no, we're gonna have to use this device 90 minutes. And I'm like, you don't wanna use the device 90 minutes. I really think just getting them started with that discussion, what is the learning, what do you want the students to do, and then ask them, because it's a big change. I mean, 23 years ago, I could teach the way I learned. This is not the classroom I went into anymore. But just having that talk around what does the teaching look like, not the technology.
Good.
One thing at the beginning of the year at Frederick County Middle, we set up a Google community, and we called it the FCMS Grab Bag, and everyone's able to post different things on it, and that's kind of helped get that out there to other people of what the cool things we are doing in our building. So like the quizzes, or I use Pear Deck in my classroom, so I'm able to post like a little video clip or information about it. But we're very open to like going to observe other teachers and kind of just checking out what's available, because the one-to-one is a little scary at first, but you kind of just have to find what works for you. Don't try everything at once. Just pick a couple things, try it, get used to it, and then progress from that point.
We've done some similar things. We've had different share fair professional developments and things like that at our school, where if you consider yourself more of an expert in using a certain type or certain program, you kind of take that on and you'll help any other teacher that wants to try it and support them in that way.
Yeah, I think at our school too, we do a lot of collaboration within our disciplines. And since, for example, I had that website, the other chemistry teachers have now used it. If they come up with something they like, we add it to the website so that hopefully it's a resource that everyone can use. But one of the things that I've heard teachers say, for example, with the simulations, is they do the whole simulation and then they don't understand what they did or why they did it. And so it's sort of with the blended classroom. You know, you have to stop at certain points and go over what did you do, what did you learn, to That way it makes more sense to them. And I do a lot of little embedded quizzes and things. So we talk about that in our collaboratives, that these are the things you need to do to make sure they're learning. You don't spend 45 minutes sitting on the computer to get nothing out of it. You spend 10 or 15 minutes on it, you stop, you regroup before you move forward.
All great points. I love the theme of collaboration between teachers. I love the focus on the instruction. So what are our goals here? And then how does the technology support that? So thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to move on to our next little mini chapter or section here, which is specific to the use of videos, games, animations, and simulations in the classroom. And obviously, we've already been discussing a lot of that. Let me share with you some of the latest data. So as I mentioned before, we saw a lot of growth in terms of teachers using videos and games, and some interesting breakdowns of that. Actually, the largest growth in terms of the use of games was in elementary schools. In fact, for kindergarten, first, and second grade teachers, 77% of those teachers said that they're using games as part of their instruction. We thought that was very interesting. The use of simulations and animations was higher in classrooms where teachers were teaching blended, or teaching in a flipped learning model, or a fully virtual model, or they were in a science classroom using some of the tools that were available to science teachers. So we also thought that was very interesting. We also thought that it was interesting to look at the video breakdown as well, because what was also interesting about the growth in the videos is that, as opposed to some other technologies, we did see a little bit of a generational divide. So that for teachers that had 4 years or less of teaching experience, they were using classroom than the teachers that had, I'm sorry to say, 16 plus years of experience. What was interesting in that was there was actually a correlation with that, with what teachers were thinking about for their own professional development. So teachers that were comfortable using videos as part of their professional development, whether they were doing it ad hoc on their own, going out to YouTube to look up how do I do something, or it was something that was structured through their district. If they had those type of experiences, they were more likely to use videos within their own instruction than the teachers that had not had that type of professional development experience as well. We also asked teachers about how they were using, in particular, videos and animations, such as our little chemistry example we used here. So how are you actually using that within instruction? And so there was a lot of variety here, whether it was to introduce a lesson or a unit, to be able to facilitate a class discussion. Quite often, teachers will use a video to be able to place some context around a class discussion that they want to have. I've seen that used actually very well in history classes. To illustrate a difficult concept, that's sort of how I felt about the chemical reactions, to be honest with you. And then also this idea to provide an alternative to text-based class materials. What was really fascinating to us, and we've been tracking this over time, is that when we ask students about their preference, is your preference to read a text or to be able to watch something? Students' preference increasingly is to watch something, not to read. I know that for the English teachers of the world, that is terrifying to all of us. But one of the things that we heard from the students also was that they felt that they learned more quickly. And I think, Beth, I think you mentioned this, or maybe Mary Catherine mentioned this, about the fact that the students actually picked up the information more quickly through a video. And so it streamlined the learning process a little bit. The students recognize that as well, and that was one of the key benefits that the students told us about. But from a benefit statement, the teachers also talked about student engagement, which echoes what we heard from the principals, being able to address different learning styles, and then also this idea of providing a different teaching approach than my own. And I know for a lot of teachers, that's hard to get to that place and say that my students need a different teaching approach. But as we're addressing different learning styles and understanding that people have different ways of assimilating information, being cognizant of that, I think, is an important part of this new instructional modality. So we have a question here for the audience, and then I'm going to ask our students as well. So for the audience, we're going to ask him, what class are you watching videos for learning? What do you think middle school students said? Anybody have some ideas? What subject or what class? I hear math, I hear history, science, arts. So for my esteemed panel here, if you think about the classes that you have, is there one particular class where you've watched more videos than others? Sandra?
Science class.
Science. Omar?
Math.
Math. Addie?
History.
History. Dean?
Math.
Math. Okay, so let's see what our 107,000 middle school students across the country said. Well, it was pretty close. Science was their number one, followed by math, so a smart audience that we have here. But right behind it was social studies, and then English language arts was further behind. So I think we were all pretty right. I think we'll get an A for that test all the way across. We asked the students, so why watching videos in particular? Why is that a good way for learning? And we heard some really interesting things from the students. The number one answer, though, the students gave us was that they can watch it as many times as they need to. That really speaks to a student's understanding of where they need remediation and taking advantage of the technology. So it's not just sitting down and watching a video all the way through. And I know that, for example, when we looked at the video about chemical reactions, we could have stopped at any one point. We could have had a discussion about that first point, the second point, the third point, the fourth, the fifth. Students are doing the same sort of thing, particularly if they have access to the videos. They're watching them over and over again to develop some proficiency. The students also recognize that it makes it easier to understand difficult concepts. And I know that particularly whether we're talking about math or we're talking about science, sometimes we're talking about things that can't really be seen or even read about. And so the opportunity to see something visually, it goes back to that visual processing, is something that could be really valuable. I also like the fact that the students mentioned that it connects what they're learning to the real world so that they have the relevancy and the context associated with all of that. And then much further down the line here, folks, we see that the students say that the process of watching a video is engaging and keeps their attention. I think sometimes from an adult standpoint, we only look at the engagement part of the formula and not look at the other benefits from the student perspective. Okay, so we have more questions here for our group. And remember, folks, we're going to get to the point where you have the opportunity to ask some questions as well. So we talked a little bit about the fact, I'm starting with the students on this side, a little bit about the fact that you have watched some videos in different classes. So give us your perspective as to what did you like about that, or what do you like about watching videos as part of instruction? How does that help you with learning personally? Go ahead, Omar.
Well, like you were saying earlier, it does help, and it does fit my learning style. It's a lot quicker, and you can easily go back to it anytime you need to if you don't understand it.
And how do you think, Omar, it fits your personal learning style?
I prefer, honestly, textbook, but visual, it helps me a lot better as well.
Okay. Other perspectives on the value of videos? Go ahead, Ben.
I feel that I can it helps me learn a little quicker and I can understand it better if I watch it more than once.
So do you find yourself, Ben, watching videos over and over again?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Dean.
So I like watching videos more than once because when I don't understand the video, I put on the subtitles to understand it better.
Okay. Yes, Andra.
I like it because you can watch it in many different ways. So you can watch different versions of the same thing. Hopefully it will help you learn better.
So students, do you ever feel that sometimes, maybe you're doing this outside of school, you need another approach to maybe how your teacher provided you with instruction? Does the video serve that purpose for you? Sometimes? Okay. All right, so teachers, tell us a little bit, we know a little bit from Mrs. McGonigal about how she's used videos, but I'd love to hear, particularly from our history teachers. So how are you using videos or animations, games, or simulations in your classroom? Whoever would like to start.
I teach using a flipped learning model, and I teach a large population of English language learners. So this way they get the lecture portion of class at home, And since many of them have come from other countries, they have no clue about U.S. history. So a lot of the things that maybe when we were in 7th grade we'd heard of, they haven't. And I've noticed they feel a lot more confident and comfortable when they come into the classroom because they have a little bit of background knowledge. And then they can use that when we do more higher level thinking activities during the class.
So do you set up videos in advance?
Yes, I create all of my own videos. I use basically a PowerPoint slideshow and then a webcam so that they can see my face and connect with how I'm talking, and they get used to, as the year goes on, the cadence and speed of my voice, so it's easier for them to take notes. And then they have a paper form of notes that they fill out while they watch the video. But the nice thing about that is whether they have a computer at home or not, if they have any sort of device, they can access the video through a QR code or a web link.
Okay.
I use Edpuzzle. I've started using a lot this year. It's kind of my new favorite thing to show video clips to the students because it allows me to input questions. It stops along the way. I can also crop the videos within it. And then I can even add my notes or even my voice to it if there's something that I want to give some additional instruction that maybe the video clip did not. But it's links to Google Classroom, which is awesome. And then I'm able to check the students' progress where they are. I can go in and actually grade it from that system and see where maybe they're weak or we need to go back and review something. They can also replay that video over and over again or that one little section to answer that question. So they really enjoy that.
You know what's interesting, Amy, is that I think sometimes when I talk to folks about the role of videos within instruction, people think it's back in the old days when someone used to put a film strip on and the room would get dark and you'd snooze a little bit. That's not actually what we're talking about at all. It's a much different experience, and I think that is an important point to bring up.
Well, it's, for example, we were just teaching World War II, and I wanted to show the video of, FDR and the speech he gave after Pearl Harbor was attacked, and then I would compare it to after September 11th and that presidential address. So you can only show that through a video. I can tell them that, and we can read it, but I can't show what that day was like to them without a video.
Mary Catherine?
I started getting into flipping more from a parent perspective because I'm lousy at math, and my daughter had a flipped math classroom, and I watched what she did in this flipped and how well she was understanding math. And the interesting thing is I get more from my flipped videos. I think my parents enjoy them more than my students because they come back and it actually, the parents and the students are beginning to interact with the videos, and there's these discussions that I don't think I would have had without the parents going, oh, I watched your video last night and I didn't realize this. So I think that part of it sometimes gets lost in the discussion, but I think it's an important part.
I think that's a hugely important part. One of the other statistics we have from Speak Up is that administrators are very interested in parents becoming co-teachers, being able to support their students outside of school. One of the most interesting trends I think that we've been watching is parents that are going to Khan Academy, which has a repository of all different types of videos. Parents going on their own to Khan Academy to brush up on their math skills so that when their children come home, they can be super smart about polynomials when, in fact, maybe they weren't before. I think that's really interesting. So I want to change subjects a little bit here, students. So I know, Sandro, you mentioned Minecraft at one point. How about with the use of games? Are there any type of digital or online games that you're using as part of your class experience, your learning experience? Anybody have anything that they want to share? Dean, go ahead.
I use Cool Math for games so then I could study so then I could do fractions. When to cook things and how long it'll take.
So Dean, are you doing Cool Math in class or at home or both?
I use it both.
At both? Okay. Sandro, can you tell us a little bit more about Minecraft? Because I think that's particularly interesting.
So for 5th grade, Mr. Painter has set up a class each week for every class in 5th grade, and each time it's a different thing, like stopping a volcano from like burning a village or a fraction house.
And do you think that's an effective way for you to learn?
Yes.
Why do you think that is? Yes. Why do you think that is?
Because it's fun and a good way to learn. Because
Okay.
you can do math, science.
All kinds of things. All right. Any other experience with games? Go ahead, Addie.
We use Kahoot a lot. We
Yeah.
usually use it before a test or before we start class to warm up.
So why do you think, or maybe you have a thought or maybe not, something like Kahoot? So Kahoot gives the opportunity for students to build a little game, or the teacher to build a little game, and then to ask some questions. So it's a good way to do some assessment. Why do you think that's a good way for students to learn? Do you have a perspective?
We have to answer the question quickly, so we have to think faster, and I think it helps a lot with that.
It gets competitive, doesn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
I've been in a lot of classrooms with Kahoot. It's dangerous.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to our third section, folks. We're going to talk about how students are using these type of tools outside of the classroom. And so Dean set me up a little bit when he talked about cool math. I think this is a really important statistic from our data. And again, remember, this is representing about 225,000 middle school and high school students. We asked them their level of agreement with this particular phrase: I'm learning important things for my future on my own outside of school. And so over 50% of middle school and high school students agreed with that statement. So the recognition that school does not end at 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:10, whatever it might be, is really an interesting development in the entire education process. That for today's students, learning is truly a 24/7 enterprise. School just happens to be one part of it. So when we ask students about how they're learning using these visual tools outside of school, this was particularly interesting. We asked students about their frequency of watching a video to learn how to do something. Now, this isn't homework assigned or school project. This is they've gone out and found a video on their own, or playing an online game to learn something. So across a frequency of never, rarely, sometimes, often, all the time, watching a video, 49% of students told us that that is a fairly regular activity, sometimes and all the time. 29% say they're playing a game to learn something. So understanding the recognition, the cognition that this is part of the learning experience, I think is important for all of us, whether we're in education or policy or business. Now, this is further verified by another part of our Speak Up data, where we ask the students how they want to explore different careers. And so it's been really interesting to watch sort of the divergence in terms of traditional approaches. So I want a part-time job or an internship, or maybe I want to go on a field trip or shadow a career professional, to the emergence of the use of digital tools. So 50% of middle school students, an all-time high this year, told us they want to watch a video about different careers. That's their preference. 43% want to play a game, and 39% want to learn about it through social media. So again, it sort of makes us think a little bit differently maybe about some of these digital tools, particularly around social media. So we also asked students questions about their use of social media, and particularly some of the more visually oriented social media. And we do find both some similarities and some differences when we disaggregate by gender. So a common fact, shall we say, is that students are increasingly never or rarely using Facebook. Now, we all know why, folks, let's be honest. At the point when mom and dad, teachers, and then, God forbid, grandma got on Facebook, that was the time for students to move off to something else. We know that the social media space is dynamic and changing all the time. We also know that the opposite side of it is YouTube, in terms of only, look at this, less than 10% of students say YouTube is a never or rarely experience. So that is highly pervasive. But then when we look at some of the other things, whether they are Instagram and Pinterest, we definitely see a gender differentiation there. And then when we look at online games or massively multiplayer online games, we see those seem to be more strongly utilized by boys than by girls. Now, I've talked to a couple different researchers about this to sort of understand, so why one way or another? And there's conversations around whether it is the collaborative activity, whether it is about communications. Someone even proffered the idea of Instagram and Pinterest being obviously visually based, but so are the games. But the games are more action-oriented visual than static visual. And so I think there's some future speak-up questions in there that you might see on next year's survey, but I thought it was interesting enough to share with you. Okay, this is my final set of questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for your questions. So let's see. I'm going to start on the student side here. So students, you saw some of the data findings that I shared. Are you using some digital tools outside of school to self-direct learning? Not for homework, not for school projects, things that you're doing on your own to either learn something or get yourself prepared. Omar?
I use my laptop from time to time when I want to get ahead on my studies.
Okay, so like what type of things are you getting ahead on, Omar?
Like sometimes when I have struggle with my math, I'll ask my teacher what's going on or what we might be doing for the next week, and then I'll get a head start on it.
And has that proven to be beneficial for you?
Yes.
Okay. Other things, students? Are you using any sort of technology outside of school? Dean, go ahead.
I use school math for mostly social studies, so then I could get ready for the SOLs.
Oh, so you're doing some preparation for your standardized tests? Okay. Have you had your standardized test yet? You already have, right? No, not yet. Oh, okay. Any other use? Anyone going to YouTube? Anyone ever been on YouTube? I thought I saw that one coming. Beside fun videos, do you ever look up videos in terms of how to learn how to do something? Yes? Sandra? What type of thing have you looked up?
There's this thing called, I forgot what his name is, but has these characters called Tim and Moby, and they go over math and science and social studies.
That's Brain Pop. Yes. Moby is a big favorite of lots of students.
Yeah, it's so funny at the end.
He is funny at the end. He's very funny. There's lots of good videos and movies, animations, as well as games on Brain Pop as well. Anyone playing any games outside of school? Ben, what type of games are you playing?
We use quizzes for, like, our teacher gives us a code, and then we go home if we miss a day, and we can, like, we can go through and learn from that.
Okay. This is something that adults get confused about. And we've seen it in our data, and maybe you can help me understand it. I think sometimes adults think that students aren't interested in learning outside of school, that you're not curious about things. Is that true or not true? Do you like learning?
Yes.
Are there things that you're doing maybe even to get ready for a future job or for college? Do you think there's types of skills that you need to develop? Is there anything that you're doing outside of school ready for those things? You have an example for us, Omar?
Well, what I want to do is be able to draw, so I'll be doing a lot of drawing to prepare myself for that, so I can start doing digital art.
Oh, okay. Great. Fabulous. All right, let me ask the teachers a couple questions here. So this idea of how students are using technology outside school to self-direct learning, is that something that you're taking into account in your classrooms?
Well, having a child who likes to talk like his mother, he didn't often pay attention in class because he was too busy talking. And he'd say, "It doesn't matter, Mom, because I'm going to go home and find a video on it anyway." And now that he's in college, that's exactly what he does too. He says if he doesn't understand something the professor talked about, he just goes online until he finds somebody who he can understand.
Interesting.
I teach teach another class, Strategies for Success,
yeah.
which is teaching students how to take care of so that they're prepared for outside. And that is one of the biggest, with this group of students, they're students who are struggling in school, getting the idea that you can use YouTube for good, not just evil, as we sometimes like to say to them. So getting this idea that, if you don't understand that math problem, it's okay to go there. And a lot of students, I know myself, because I'm not comfortable with it, I haven't developed those skills in those students. I would be very interested to see when the younger students come to high school, to see if they've already had that skill.
That's interesting. It's almost like you feel like you need to give them permission. That's interesting.
I do think it's something that they kind of need to practice and be taught kind of how to do it.
Yeah.
Pear Deck, which I've used a lot this year, they have just recently created something that is called a takeaway. And they publish a takeaway, which is linked to Google Classroom. So students can do a Pear Deck in my classroom, and then they get that takeaway that they can go home, and my hope is that they open that takeaway, and it opens up into a Google Doc. But I'm able to go into that each student's Google Doc, and I can leave additional information for them or something maybe they could do, maybe if there was an area they were struggling with. So I'm able to leave comments and notes to the kids on their Pear Deck takeaway, which is kind of awesome.
Really
Yeah.
heavily personalized, Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another part is we just need to show them what's out there. Earlier this week, I showed my students the Google Cultural Institute, and they can go into a lot of different art museums and literally walk through the museum virtually. A lot of museums around the world are on there. Or yesterday, we explored the Marshall Plan with what was put together on the Google Cultural Institute. And a lot of the students were very excited to go home and look at something else on there as well.
That's one of the other findings that we've had from the Speak Up data is that when the students are doing some of this self-directed learning, more times than not, it's actually stimulated by what happens in the classroom. So you brought up a topic, it could have been the Marshall Plan, but you had a certain amount of time to cover that and a certain time in your calendar. But the students then took that as a jumping off point to do their own self-exploration around something that was of interest to them. So I think that's really very cool. So some time for questions here. You can either ask questions of the students or of the teachers. Who has some questions for my esteemed panel of experts here? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask Dean to tell us about the robots that he's made.
Oh,
and what has he learned, or what sort of job do you think that would help you with in the future?
That's a great question. So Dean had told me earlier that when I asked him what he was interested in, he told me robots, and I thought that was cool. So Dean, tell us a little bit about your robots and then maybe where that might lead you in the future.
So I use the robots and I program or use the remote control that I have for it, and they're all made out of Lego, so I try to make sure they're all perfect so then I could make it work. And one of my problems I have is like with the spider with the legs.
Why do you have a problem with the spider?
The legs keep falling off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you're going to have to come back and tell us how that works out, Dean. Brian?
Yeah, and for the students, as you use more technology, you're creating a digital footprint. Have you been educated at your schools in internet safety, or do you rely on your teachers to give that to you?
Good question, Brian. So you're using all kinds of different technology. Have you had some formal instruction on how to be safe online, how to be a good digital citizen?
Yes.
Is it part of your curriculum?
Yes.
And do you feel that your teachers are reinforcing that?
Yes.
Okay, good. John?
So, question for the teachers. A lot of what you're talking about is not just what you do in the classroom, but sending the videos, the other lessons home for the kids digitally, which is great, except for two things. One, I now have to fight with my 7th grader over the use of the computer because there's so much flip learning going on, which I think is fabulous, but I don't have to work. The other piece, though, is what about the kids who don't have internet access at home? How are you guys addressing that? Because they, the libraries have to close at some point, and they only have so much money for Star Wars. So I'm curious as to how you guys address that with some of your kids.
Well, my building is allowed to take their Chromebooks home, which is great. So if they do have wireless, but we live in a very rural area. So my population, I got a lot that have internet and are able to do that, and then I have a lot that aren't. But my door is always open during lunch. I don't know if I've had lunch probably in 3 years by myself. So the kids always come in, or they come in during bus haul in the morning, or they're with me after school. But I always find a way to get them to get that, whatever they need.
But when they leave school, for a lot of these kids, that's it.
Yes, I agree, yeah.
But at the same token, if we don't give those kids that internet skill, if we keep saying we're not going to give kids everything, nobody gets it, they're going to fall further and further behind. Now, one thing that I do as a teacher, if I'm giving a flipped video, it can't be due the next day, because that video, they're going to run into, well, the computer broke that week, or just because they even have the internet access, you have an important presentation that kid's not getting. And then I think a lot of teachers who are supporting it, I kind of wish we could have a college model at our school where, 10 o'clock, the labs close, but I'll stay, I'll come in early, and a lot of teachers will do that.
Yeah, it's obviously a big challenge, and a challenge that lots of folks are talking about. On the Speak Up survey, we asked a series of questions this year around what many people are calling the homework gap. And so this idea of, do the students have access to safe and consistent connectivity outside of school to be able to participate actively in these type of experiences? And so John gave us a great example of what I call contention or competition at home for the access. So there's obviously the students that don't have access, but then you have contention or competition for the access as well. Mary Catherine, I hadn't heard before that nuance of being cognizant of due dates around that, and I think that's a really interesting point that I hadn't heard before, so thank you for sharing. Some other questions? Yes, ma'am.
For the teachers, a question about how you find content to use. So what are your trusted sources for that? How do you know it's high quality? What are your standards for that? And do you have any preferred formats or lengths of videos or platforms that you like to use most often?
I like to use the government websites or EDUs or nonprofit organizations. Those are all the ones that I go to first to try to find what I need, because then I feel like I can trust what they do. And of course, you always, wherever you get it, you have to watch it first or do it first, which does take up a lot of time. And one of the drawbacks for some teachers getting involved, and they say, I don't have time to go find this. I don't have time to do this simulation. But that's where the collaboration comes. But Gov, EDU, and nonprofits.
I use Discovery Education a lot too, so that's a real trusted source, and my county really utilizes that immensely. So, I mean, that's a great source. But again, it's just finding what works and sharing that out. So that's why what's great is our Google community. So if a teacher finds something that works really great, then we shoot it out in that Google community, then everybody kind of knows about it. So it's just kind of spreading the word to collaborate with each other.
And one thing, I've been creating a lot of my videos, but what really helped, thanks to the Google, because it's more open, I've been able to work with a teacher in another Fairfax County school, even though we're never in a building. So it's like, I don't have any teachers at my school who are making these, but we divided the work, and we were able to work together because we had those open walls.
You also asked about You also asked about the length of the videos. For 7th grade, I don't show them more than 10 minutes at a time, and then we stop and discuss and regroup. And for a flipped lesson, I don't send home more than a 7-minute long video so that they have time to rewatch it as many times as they need. Or, for instance, if they don't have connection at home, it's not impacting their day significantly.
All very good experiential knowledge about how to source videos, how to use this type of digital content effectively. You know, one of the things that we have found, because we actually asked teachers on the Speak Up survey, so how do you determine quality in the different content that you're using? And one of the key determinants often is it's either been created by another teacher, or it's been recommended by a teacher, or evaluated or reviewed by a teacher. And so I think that also gets to that experiential component. You know, is it going to work in my classroom? Can I trust that it's going to work? So we had another question. Yes, sir.
Question to the teachers. What method do you guys use in Like, what methods do you use to sort of help them become more comfortable and not be shy or alienated in the classroom?
That's a great question. So the question, and I'm repeating the question so that our virtual audience can be part of this, is about students' proficiency. Now, we know from the Speak Up data ourselves, not all kids are advanced tech users. So how do you deal with that range of tech savviness or comfort or even preference amongst your students?
I'm getting students coming into 7th grade from different elementary schools, and so they all have a varying degree of experience with technology in school and outside of school. And we use computers in my class every single day. And so by the end of the 2nd month of school, they're pretty tech savvy. And if they're not, I'll partner them up to help somebody who might need some more assistance. And by November, they're teaching me new things about the computers. They really do pick it up very, very quickly at their age. But they do come in the first few weeks, and there's a huge gap between students who are experienced and who are not.
Okay, good, thank you. Another question? Yes, sir.
I was struck by both what the students said and some of the teachers said, especially by your storyboard on the survey results, that what the students most liked about digital learning was that they could go back and repeat it. And I'm wondering if there isn't a problem with taking cohorts of students of the same age and trying to teach them all 7th grade U.S. history, when some of them probably would have been ready for that in 5th grade, and some of them would do better to get it in 9th grade. I remember when I was in K-12, kids were always pressured to keep up, and some of us got to go to college-level courses sometimes, and some who couldn't keep up were kind of mortified in the classroom. Can't that be fixed in part, apart from whether the learning is digital or not, by not assuming that all 12-year-olds should be learning the same thing? Well, some 12-year-olds might be very advanced in language skills and retarded in numeric skills and so forth. Are we doing something very wrong by assuming that all 12-year-olds are ready for the same stuff?
So a couple interesting questions in your comments, sir. You know, on one hand, what you're talking about or what you're asking about is what some folks are calling competency-based learning. So the idea of when are students competent to move forward. The other part of it I think that is also very interesting is that technology does afford the opportunity for competency-based learning and actually makes it easier for teachers to facilitate that. We've been doing some studies beside our K-12 work. We've also been doing some studies in higher education. And it's been very interesting to study how they have been adopting competency-based models in some skill-based classes that could not be facilitated in a standard. So we're in a freshman class to learn computer skills, Microsoft applications, and we're all going to proceed through Word at the same pace, and we're all going to proceed through PowerPoint at the same pace. So it does lend itself to some really interesting ideas around this topic of competency-based education. Do you have any thoughts about that, teachers?
Well, the only thing I know is actually the woman I came with was telling me about our online courses, and we have some online courses for remediation. And what they do is they take a pretest, and if they pass it, they can move to the next unit, and they take a pretest, and that way they're not going over something they already know and getting bored, but they're starting with where they have trouble.
Really interesting topic.
That's a very limited program.
Yeah. So I have one final question for my entire panel here, and then I've got some housekeeping sum-up type stuff for you, but I know the panel will stick around if you have some additional questions. So here's kind of my final questions. I'd love to hear some student perspectives. I'd love to hear some teacher perspectives. We're here on Capitol Hill. There might be some policymakers or some folks that work for policymakers here at the federal level, maybe even from the state and local perspective. So what would you want someone who is responsible for new education programs to know about why technology or this type of digital content is important for student learning? What do you think adults, students should know about why technology is important for students? Who would like to share? Dean?
It could unlock your imagination, or it could help you learn better if you're bad in like social studies or art.
Okay, thank you. Sandra?
When you use paper, you waste a whole lot of paper during the school year. The computer saves up. All you need is data for the computer.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, teachers, your perspective?
I think it just opens up so much variety, and you just are not stuck with one thing that you have to do every day. There's so many cool new things out there that, I mean, you can get on and find something new today to try out. So it keeps you on your toes. You're never going to get bored. The kids aren't going to get bored, and every day is just going to be different for them. And I think that's key to their education, is just not doing the same thing over and over again.
Okay, great.
I like the idea of the instant feedback, so if they have embedded questions, they know instantly whether they're doing it right. It's very frustrating for a child to do, 10 math problems and they'll all be wrong and they don't find out till the next day when they were making the same mistake over and over again. Using the online resources, they know instantly that's wrong, let me figure out why it's wrong before they go through all the problems.
It makes it a lot easier to differentiate instruction throughout our classrooms, because I teach honors and English language learners, and it does make it a lot easier for students who are more advanced. They can do extensions, and there's a lot more opportunity for that. And the students who need the extra support, I can work with them more one-on-one because I know the rest of the class is engaged.
Okay.
And I also think it's important because the students also have to learn how to use the technology. Social media is wonderful, but what's the difference between professional and personal social media?
That's right.
And I think that is something that we as teachers need to start taking a little more ownership of.
Yeah, so we've talked here about the current state of technology in the classroom. We've talked about the use of videos and games and animations, and I'm so appreciative of our students sharing their perspective. And then we had a real world glimpse into what's happening in the classroom today and the opportunities that can come from that. So with that, I'm happy to share with you that the national results are available now, and I guess I took a page from Sandro. I didn't realize that was such an important thing, but we didn't print this year's report. It's online. So we have a postcard here. So, and it's in your folder. Make sure you get that. It has the link there if you want the full report. In addition to that, we also provide you with 3 handouts. Data from teachers, data from parents, and also data from students. So some interesting data facts that you might be able to use either to impact your own work, to share with your administrators, to share with other folks that are parents, to be able to share with folks that are involved with educational programs. Now, we do have some new reports that are going to be coming out over the next couple of months. We're actually doing a series of 3 new reports with our friends at Blackboard. We're doing a report on digital learning trends, community engagement, and then some feedback from communications officers, district public affairs or public information officers about digital learning. That one will be really interesting. We're going to be working with our good friends at the National Science Teachers Association, looking at science teachers in particular. It's been really interesting for us over the last couple of years to focus in on different subjects or discipline areas in terms of how teachers are using technology. And we think there's some really interesting exemplars coming from science teachers about how they're using technology. And then also continuing our work on personalized learning. And we're just finishing up a really interesting project about cloud computing. And we'll be sharing some of those results. All of that is available for you on tomorrow.org, so please come and visit us to access our reports. It's part of our nonprofit mission to get this information into the hands of people that can make decisions and to make good use of it. And then before you know it, Speak Up 2016 will open up in October. Again, it will be our 14th year polling K-12 students, teachers, parents, and administrators. And I know that many of the districts that are here with us today are regular participants in Speak Up. So again, many thanks to our wonderful partners that are with us here today, as well as all of our fabulous sponsors. Special thanks to my friends at Blackboard for their participation here today as well. And please join me in thanking our fabulous panel of experts. It is truly our pleasure and our privilege to do this work, to be able to collect feedback from students, from teachers, parents, and administrators, and to be able to facilitate fascinating conversations such as what we had today. And so I feel deeply honored to have had the opportunity to meet these fabulous students and to have the opportunity to work with these wonderful teachers. So thank you so very much, folks, for coming today. Thank you to our virtual audience for your participation as well. Keep up the Twitter chat. We're going to be continuing to tweet about these results. And we look forward to maybe seeing you next year when we present Speak Up 2016 results. Thanks, folks.
I just want to put my tennis shoes back on.
It was nice to meet you too. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.